Hello again. I'm just got a news article up. I've not read it yet, but I thought it might be interesting for us to go through it. I suppose it'd be interesting for you as well to see my initial reaction. As I say, I haven't read it. Tell a lie. I've read the first couple of lines, maybe the first paragraph, but I'll just read the title of it. Politicians must listen to the people on immigration or face the red hot fury. And this is by the now ex-immigration minister, Robert Jenrick. And it also goes on to say underneath that's the top comment, so the opening sort of headline. And then it's underneath it says, "This will be the defining issue of the 21st century politics. The public's patience has already snapped." I think it's fair to say that is the understatement of the century. And now the Tories, in my opinion, are going into full damage control because they know they are going to get wiped out at the next election. And they are trying to save whatever they can. Now, I believe what they are going to say is all lies and that they actually have no intention of dealing with immigration whatsoever. It's a form of what's called containment, which is kind of like somebody saying to you, "Oh, I completely agree with you in principle on what you're saying," but then they go on to do and say a load of other things that completely go against what you're saying. So it's a way of showing empathy to try and calm down what they would call the radicals who on their side of politics and contain them, and placate them to try and stop them running off to say a party like UKIP in the case of the Tories. So I am absolutely under no illusions that the Tories have no intention whatsoever of actually dealing with immigration. Firstly, and I think a big part of this is the actual infrastructure behind the Tory party and a lot of the Tory politicians themselves and those in like the Tory party HQ and etc. Those types of people, they are really angry about Brexit. They are really, really angry about Brexit, and I think this mass immigration is a way of sticking it to the plebs. Like, you wanted Brexit, well, guess what? We're going to give you Brexit, but we're not going to give you the Brexit. We're going to rub your face in Brexit, kind of thing. But sorry about that. But they're not going with the spirit of what people actually wanted, which was obviously Brexit was about, to the majority of people anyway, including myself, controlling immigration and slowing it down, and they've just put it on steroids. They really have. Secondly, and I think this is also another important component to it, it's immigration. Not immigration, sorry, for big business employment, cheap labour. The Tory party have said that they're going to stop companies allowing businesses to pay, I think it's 20% less to immigrant workers. I mean, that's insane, isn't it? You work in, and you get this a lot with the NHS, where they're saying, "Oh, we think it's racist," or "You're not going to have the carers for immigration." You get these doctors and nurses and so other types saying, "Well, you're racist for not wanting mass immigration," and yet they're complaining that they're not getting a pay rise. It's like, why the hell would the NHS give you a pay rise when they can bring a doctor over from Pakistan or India or Africa or anywhere else and pay him literally under law, they're allowed to pay him 20% less than you? Why would they give you a pay rise? Are you that stupid? Like, literally, those people are meant to be more intelligent than us. Like, and I say us, I use the term loosely, that's more projection on myself. But a lot of people who say, I haven't been to college, I haven't been to university, I'm supposed to be a crayon munching window licker. I'm on the autistic spectrum. I'm supposed to be brain dead. I'm according to some of those people, they probably think I struggle to wipe my own backside. You know what I mean? So these people who are supposed, and to become a doctor, you've got to be clever. You've got to be able to do better than 2 + 2 equals, 4. Although some of them now would say that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. Like, there was that whole for all last year where there were people trying to come out with, well, it depends on how you define 2, doesn't it? I mean, when you're talking in mathematical terms, you could be rounding to the nearest number, which would then be 2, but it could actually be 2.7321 or some rubbish like that. It's like, no, we're literally stating 2 + 2. Like, they massively try and obfuscate stuff to try and mental gymnastics. And again, a reason why we need to bring flogging back, in my opinion, for people. I mean, I genuinely mean that as well. We genuinely should bring flogging back. That's a topic for another time. But anyway, the so-called intelligent people cannot understand that. Why should they get a pay rise when you can literally bring in foreign labour who will work for almost a quarter of less than what they are And they'd probably work for even less than that, to be honest with you. You could probably pay a foreign doctor from, say, Pakistan or Africa. You could probably offer them half the amount of what a current doctor's paid, and they'd take the job. So anyway, I'm getting a bit off topic there. So anyway, back to the article at hand. So the article starts: on my first visit as immigration minister was to a family in Dover. The home had just been broken into by a small boat arrival. Well, no surprises there. If you're willing to break into the country, why wouldn't you break into a house? Like, honestly, it's just fractal. And for those of you who don't know what fractal means, it's like if you look at waveforms. Waves can go, if you get in your bath and you just tap the water, you'll see little tiny waves, and they'll look exactly the same if you scale it up. And it's the same with sound waves. Or if you look at a rock under a microscope, or you look at the rock in your hand, and then you look at a mountain from a distance, a rocky mountain, it all looks the same. In effect, it scales equally. That's what fractal means. And it's the same with this kind of crime. You've got these massive groups of people coming in on a boat illegally, breaking into the country. The country is just like a large scale version of your home. You don't lock your front door at night because you hate the people outside. You lock your door at night because you care about the people who are inside the house. It's the same with the country. We don't have a border and try and keep people out necessarily because we hate those people outside the border. We do it because we love and care about the people within. It's fractal. It scales. So anyway, back to the article. It was a portent of the damage illegal migration is doing to this country that would confront me every day in my position. A day later, I was summoned to the Commons to explain why hundreds of hotels were being taken over to house these illegal arrivals. Well, it's an easy answer to that. It's because the government's weak and aren't willing to do what actually needs to be done, which is either ferry the people back to France, put them on a plane immediately and send them to, I don't even care where, or block the boats in the channel. And if they sink, well, that's their problem and their fault. Like literally use a naval vessel or a fishing trawler or whatever and act as a literal barrier in the channel. And if you have to, fire warning shots at them. I genuinely do not care. Like, they are invaders. They're not refugees. They're not asylum seekers. They're not tourists. These people are literal invaders, in my opinion. There was, of course, no defence I could offer for this farcical situation, nor any immediate solution. With my hands tied by primary domestic legislation and the European Convention on Human Rights for these illegal arrivals to be housed. I mean, that's just a load of BS right there. That is like going back to when we were properly in the EU. That's like saying we can't do it because the EU is stopping us from doing it. Well, yes, they actually can do it. France have just shown us because they deported somebody, even though the ECHR said they couldn't. It is literally weakness. These people are weak and have no will to do what needs to be done. They can do it, they just won't do it. And we saw it through the whole Brexit process, and I know I keep harping on about that. They literally rammed through laws in a 24-hour period, starting at Parliament, getting passed in a vote, going to the House of Lords, getting rubber stamped in the House of Lords, back into Parliament to get ascended into law. They can do it when they want to do it. And I do not forget that, and I'm sure many of you don't forget that either. Soon after, I was working with the MP in Knowsley, dealing with the aftermath of a riot in a deprived area of Merseyside, where trouble surrounding an asylum hotel had led to communal violence. See, that's a load of rubbish. It wasn't a riot. It was people rightly standing up who were being ignored by Parliament to say, no, we don't want this. Just like what's happened in Scotland recently. There was a supposed riot of vigilante action there, which hasn't been on the news, hasn't been covered. And the whole town, basically, county line drugs, I believe it was gypsies who were doing it, bringing them from Yorkshire into the town of Scotland, and the police weren't doing anything. Now, I think there has been an update on that, which is the police were trying to say they were building up a portfolio of evidence. Well, you know what? It's not difficult. Whenever you see the cars coming up, you pull them over because they're going to have drugs in them. Like, you literally just do that. And I personally, although it's not legal or lawful, and I'm not promoting it, but I genuinely do not blame those people for doing that when the police, as we saw with grooming gangs for many, many years, that community's probably gone, you know what, this is never going to get dealt with. Our kids are getting ruined here, having their lives ruined, getting drugs pushed on them, probably getting pimped as well, all this other stuff, getting beaten up for non-payment, etc., etc. And they've just had enough of it. And they're just sick of seeing weak police doing nothing and actually catering and protecting the criminals because they're in some sort of protected minority group. And people say, oh, it's hypocrisy, allegation. It's not hypocrisy. It's hierarchy. Never forget that. We have a caste system in the UK now. And people of my skin complexion and with my ancestry are at the bottom of the poo pile. And if you fall into that category as well, guess what? You're at the bottom of the poo pile too. Majority is the bottom of the pile as far as these people are concerned. Do not forget that. A former Home Secretary, Sajid Javid, declared a major incident when 250 arrivals crossed between January and November. See, that's when they should have dealt with it. Right then. That should have been the point. When everybody said it, it's only going to get worse. We got called right-wing extremists. Oh, you're just a right-wing conspiracy theorist. It's not going to get worse than this. Well, now we've got tens of thousands coming over. Like that, literally 1,000 in a day sometimes. And 114,000 illegal arrivals late. So 250 arrivals crossed between January and November in 2018. 5 years on, and 114,000 illegal arrivals later. When I walked into the beleaguered Home Office, it was clear that the illegal, dangerous, and completely unnecessary crossings had pushed the UK beyond breaking point. Yeah, well, that is true. That is true. And you've only had 13 years in power to get this done. And you've only had since Boris Johnson got his 80-seat majority where you could have literally voted anything through you needed. Like, you literally could have voted through laws saying that these people... And I am being intentionally hyperbolic here, and I don't mean this, just for anybody who wants to go... Right? They could have voted through laws saying that people crossing illegally aren't human beings and therefore can be shot on sight. Like, I'm not saying that should be done, but that's just to explain simply. Like, they literally could have put through any law they wanted. And they could have put through any law that would have allowed them to put through any law that they wanted as well. Like, Boris Johnson literally gave himself unlimited powers during COVID lockdown as well. Don't forget that. Like, they literally have and I know I keep saying literally, but they have all the tools in place. And the precedences, multiple precedences for doing this. They just don't want to. The Prime Minister was right, therefore, to promise to do whatever it takes to end this farce. And until Wednesday, he had kept his word. While the legality of the Rwanda policy was winding its way through our courts, we did everything else we could, striking a deal with Albania, increasing returns of immigration offenders and cracking down on illegal working. Well, I don't know much about the Albania deal, but that Rwanda plan is just a joke. Like, we're going to be paying for the accommodation of anybody sent there for 5 years. Anybody who commits a crime while they're in Rwanda can get sent back here. And also, every single refugee or asylum seeker or illegal or whatever we send to Rwanda, we get a Rwandan refugee back. Like, it's crazy. It is the worst deal. Like, it's literally a deal that's been made just to try and appease people and just say, look, we've got this Rwanda deal, whilst maintaining the status quo. It's insane. Again, because the Tories do not want to end mass migration. They really don't. Don't think they do. Because if they did, as I keep saying, they would actually deal with it. And they're not. The result has been a 30% increase in arrivals compared with last year and the closures of asylum hotels. That is progress, but far from enough. It's not progress at all. That's like, look at what it was when Tony Blair was in power. It was about 100,000 a year, and that was unacceptable then. We've got up to 700,000 net now, and they're trying to say that a 30% decrease is a positive. No, it's not. We're still infinitely higher than what it used to be. Like, going back to pre-1997, it was like 30,000 a year. So these people are just lying. They're trying to normalise the crisis of 10 years ago. What was crisis 10 years ago? They're trying to now normalise that to make us accept it. No, don't let this happen. We could literally have, going back before, like, the 1970s, we actually had negative numbers of immigration. Like, there were more people leaving than coming here, and the country's functioned fine. So these people are lying. They're trying to prop up a Ponzi scheme of basically benefits to the world and in this country, because we've got a massive amount of benefits going out, and that includes pensions. But you know what? I'm not being callous here, but a lot of these people have got nobody but themselves to blame if they end up losing their pensions, because they didn't have kids. Like, they thought they could go on holidays and spend all the money and live a lavish lifestyle, and somebody else's kids could pick up the bill for their retirement. And same with people who are on benefits now, who are just taking money and not or even people who are working in society. Like, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, you're earning the big money, and you're like, you know what, I don't want any kids, because I like having 4 holidays a year, and I want to drive around in my Bentley or whatever. And somebody else can wipe my backside when I'm retired and a geriatric. Why should I? You're just a parasite on society if you haven't had kids, in my opinion. Like, why would you do that? You're just expecting to outsource everything to the rest of the world, or even people in your own society. and giving nothing. You're taking everything and giving nothing back, like literal scumbags. And I've got to the point where I don't care anymore if the whole benefit system collapses in on itself. Because I've had 4 kids. I'm going to have a family to look after me when I retire. I'll have somewhere to live. Because I actually have a good relationship with my children as well. Not for selfish reasons, but because I genuinely love them. So I'm going well off topic here. Sorry, anyway, back to the point. There was a 30%... Right, yeah. The bleak reality is that there is every reason to suggest the outlook is deteriorating. There was a 30% increase of illegals arriving into the borderless Schengen area this year. Geopolitical turmoil in the Middle East and sub-Saharan Africa will further stoke migratory patterns, and there remains more than 100 million individuals displaced worldwide. So long as the EU cannot police its borders, the UK will be forced to grapple with the injustice of illegal migration. But again, this is the same thing again. All these people coming over the Mediterranean, they're being ferried by the EU. Like where the boats coming from, say, Libya are going about 10 miles offshore. There, and you're talking, it's like over 800 miles across the Med. It's huge. Like, it is literally huge. It has its own weather patterns. Above it, it's that big. You know, we're not talking about like a pond or a lake. Like, it's literally massive. And what's happening is these NGO boats are coming from Italy or from wherever, and they're sailing about the 800 miles across and picking people up basically off the coast. And they're sailing all the way back to Europe. I mean, that actually goes against international law, because they're supposed to go to the nearest point, the safe point, with people they've rescued at sea. But they're not. They're going back to Europe. And secondly, these people are funded by Europe, these NGOs. They're getting the money from Europe. The European registered boats. Like, it is such a lie that this is a crisis that can't be stopped. It is being caused by the EU itself. Again, and I think with the EU, I think it's even more pernicious than here. I think they're doing it to destabilise Europe. I think it's intentionally being done. I won't be surprised if people like, because George Soros, the billionaire who funds a lot of this stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if he sees this as revenge for what happened to his family in World War II, because he was a victim of the Holocaust. Well, he wasn't. I believe he actually worked at. I believe he was actually an informant for. I could be wrong on this, but I believe he was an informant for the SS Gestapo, a Jewish informant. So he may have done that for survival purposes. I don't know the full story, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has a massive disdain for humanity. And if and the same way a lot of these people, when you listen to them, these, and I'm not talking about the frontline protesters. I'm talking about the people high up, the big funders and the public speakers. They seem to have a very anti-human attitude. They seem to have a real disdain, especially for the West. So I think there's a lot more to it than just humanitarian reasons and the reasons that they give. I really do think that we're in a sort of a fourth generational type of warfare where they're using immigration as a form of waging war. And I mean that unironically. As long as the EU cannot police its borders, the UK will be forced to grapple with the injustice of illegal immigration. Meanwhile, the ruse to open border enthusiasts in the Labour Party, I mean, there are open border enthusiasts in the Labour Party, but the Conservatives are open border enthusiasts. Like, look at the state of our immigration, the highest it's ever been. More immigrants in the last 10 years than the entire Britain's history. Like the Labour, and this is what I keep saying with friend-enemy distinction. Don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do. If somebody's punching you in the face while saying they're your friend, they're not your friend. They're your enemy, because they're punching you in the face. And that's what the Tory party is doing to us, and Labour. They are punching us in the face with immigration whilst telling us that they care. Look at their actions. Or attempting to sell the country is that you can arrest your way out of this problem. Well, you can. You can start by arresting MPs, to be honest with you, and civil servants who refuse to do the job. Their suggestion is that an additional cross-border cell of officers can solve one of the greatest challenges of the 21st century would be laughable if it wasn't such a serious matter. Well, a cross-border cell could actually go a long way to preventing it. Now, it wouldn't be a silver bullet. There is no silver bullet to this now because the problem's that big. But yes, a cross-border policy would help. To actually stop the boats requires establishing the strongest possible deterrent to those thinking about making the journey. Well, the strongest possible deterrent would be shooting them in the channel Now, I'm not proposing for that because I'm not a genocidal maniac. But I tell you now, if they started gunning boats down in the channel, not a single boat would come across. Like, that would be the strongest. Like, sending fighter jets over the top, dropping laser-guided missiles onto them boats, which I'm not proposing to do. That would be the strongest dissuasive factor on it. Nobody would come across the channel then. Mining the channel would also be a strong deterrent. So, but I don't think that's what he means by strongest deterrent. The Rwanda policy, no, it's not. The Rwanda policy is the only credible deterrent we can implement to achieve that effect this side of a general election. No, it's not. No, it's not. That is just, once again, smoke and mirrors. They're trying to look at the left hand while they're doing the magic with the right hand. It's all smoke and mirrors. They want us chasing this Rwanda fantasy. That will not solve it. Push the boats back is the solution. Arrest people, immediate deportation back to France. Following the signing of the treaty between the UK and Rwanda that directly responds to the Supreme Court's concerns, our ability to implement the policy now rests on the passage of effective legislation. Legislation must address the Supreme Court's judgment that Rwanda may subsequently remove people to countries that are not... Again, as I said before, this Rwanda policy is a farce. It's literally a farce. Like, it will not solve the immigration because for everyone we send, we get one back from Rwanda. And then if they commit a crime over there, they're coming back to us as well. So we could end up actually worse off net-wise as a number. It's just... This whole article is just maddening. And people are going to be eating this up. I'm not even going to carry on reading it because it's just maddening. Like, these people are sycophants. They are literal idiots. They come out with this rubbish, and I believe I actually think they know they're saying rubbish, and I think Robert Jenrick is more interested in his career and his job than he is about actually dealing with the country, because I believe he's just saying what he feels he needs to say, because he's thinking about it. He knows he's going to lose his place in the next election, so he knows that he's going to be looking for a job soon. So he's trying to say what he thinks will get him hired in a big international company where it's full of people of nowhere and they all have the same luxury ideals and beliefs. It's just maddening. The Prime Minister is right to say the bill... No, it doesn't. Let's get past that. The test is, will it work? No, it won't. Right, end of test. Will it end the merry-go-round of legal challenges? No, it won't, because you're not willing to do what needs to be done. That prevents small boats arrivals being swiftly removed in sufficient numbers to create a meaningful deterrent. No, it won't. Having done as much as I could to strengthen the legislation, no, you didn't do as much as you could. I concluded, regrettably, the answer is no. It was therefore clear I could not continue in good faith in my position as the Bill's Minister. You've had 13 years. Like, these people have had 13 years. It's just lies upon lies. Admit the truth. If you actually care, Mr. Jenrick, if in the rare case that you get to set eyes on this, if you actually cared, speak the truth. Stop trying to stroke your future career prospects. There's a lot of people out there who would actually appreciate you speaking the truth. There's a lot of companies who would hire somebody who would actually speak the truth on this. But no, you're stuck in that metropolitan bubble where you're all just repeating each other's talking points, too scared to say what actually needs to be said. And I genuinely believe that we are heading towards either a mid-20th century mustache man getting into power, or we're going to have a literal civil war. Like, I genuinely believe that. Because these weak, university-educated, sycophant psychopaths who are not willing to say what needs to be said. The term for him is oikophobic. And for those who don't know, and I have used that term before, it's the hatred of the familiar with the fetishization of the foreign. And that's what a lot of this comes down to. They're unwilling to say that different cultures aren't necessarily equal to ours. And they romanticize the ideology of the noble savage. And that's that's a communist ideology, by the way. That was something Marx would be really into, was the noble savage. So even when we see all these supposed conservatives talking about what they talk about, they're actually half of them, without even realising it, they're halfway to being Marxists. Like, they are anti-nativist, they are anti-tribal, they are pro-borderless globalisation, everybody's the same, skin colour's just skin deep. It's rubbish. It literally is rubbish. And people are a lot more different than we were taught. Just ask an African person with sickle cell anemia if race matters. Ask a white person with leukemia if race matters. You know, there are many, many diseases and conditions that only affect one group of people. I'm going into it a bit deeper, but we live in a literal fantasy where the world has been turned upside down, where every single culture is expressed as being exactly the same and all of equal worth, and they're not. They're absolutely not. And we even see it where we're told to hate our own cultures. And let's take like New Zealand as an example. That's obviously quite close to Britain in culture and status. You know, they're taught to hate themselves while celebrating the Maori. Like what? You're celebrating the fact that they were a bunch of cannibals who would literally go hunting other human beings. They should be celebrated. And they think the rain coming down from the sky is tears from the god. And that should be taught as an alternative science. Like, this is the insanity that we've got going on in our society. Literal insanity. I'm not trying to poo-poo the Maori. Because, like, why should we feel guilty for, say, the slave trade or the British Empire, and yet be told that we have to celebrate the Maori who were eating people? Like, it's insane. It's literally insane. And by the way, it was my ancestors who ended the cannibalistic rituals of the Maori, right? And yet I'm told I have to be ashamed, and you have to be ashamed of our history. It's wrong. And we've got to start standing up for ourselves. And that I will say is a fact. It's wrong. Anyway, enough of that rubbish. That's just winding me up. I'm sorry, I know I said I was going to read through it all, but I'm ending it. I'll link the article below, so if you want to read the rest of it, you can do. But I'm pretty certain it's just a load more rubbish like that. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that, like, subscribe, please comment below, and I'll speak to you later.